утро, товарищи, коллеги, друзья. Я с большим удовольствием хочу поблагодарить организаторов за то, что меня пригласили выступить перед вами сегодня. Я в последний раз был в городе Киев в 1989 году. Это было еще Советский Союз, как вы помните. И я здесь был по стажировке в Москве принципиально, но и приезжал несколько раз в Киев. Так что для меня представляет большое удовольствие быть здесь с вами сегодня и говорить пару слов на русском языке. Но с вашим разрешением я сейчас переключусь на английский язык для того, чтобы лучше выразиться. Так, you know, we are having some, I think, very exciting times in the industry now. I think never before in my 30 years in the language business have I seen so much going on in so many sectors all at the same time. For the next 2 days, we're going to talk with each other and to each other and about each other. We'll be speaking with friends and colleagues, customers perhaps, and of course, competitors. So to get us started, I would like to share a few thoughts with you about who we are and some observations about our business. First of all, let me ask just briefly, what kind of work do you all do? Let's get a quick poll. We did hear some numbers in the beginning, but let's see who you all are around in the audience. Who here is working in translation or interpreting? Would say, raise your hand if you'd say you're working in translation and interpreting. That's just about everybody in the room. How about localization? How many people here are localizers? There's a few, okay, not quite as many. Globalization, who's in globalization? Now we're getting fewer hands around the room. How about technology developers? I know we have a few of those. Okay, also a few. And does anyone do something else that they would classify as their main education? Also education. Also, yeah, anything besides education? Olympic Games, good. I like that. I'm a big fan of Olympic Games. I have some history with that, but we'll talk about that later. Anything else? Consultancy services, okay. So and management, of course, yes, because after all, it's a business. Quality assurance, right, okay. So we see quite a variety of things. Now, let me ask you the question maybe a different way. What kind of business do you say you're in? How many are freelancers, would consider themselves freelancers? Okay, that looks like about half the room. How about single language vendor? You concentrate on primarily one language. Well, that's a small group, okay. Multi-language vendors, who does multiple languages? Okay, bigger group. And what about technology again? Back to providing tools and technologies. Okay, and is there some other business format? I mean, I guess education is not exactly a business, but it could be. Are there some other types maybe that you think? What's that? In-house translators, okay, good, very good point, of course, different from freelancers, yes? Conference organizers, okay. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to point out? And we come to certification, yes, that's also an excellent point. So the issue really is that there's a broad diversity in what we do, what we call the language industry today. And I thought I would take a few moments to talk to you about that because like Kiev in the last 25 years, the industry has changed an enormous amount. And I think we need to take a few moments to think about who we are in this industry and how we interact with each other. Now, as you all, I'm sure, know or believe, language, which I will use as a kind of group term for everything that we're doing, is a craft. It's an art, it's an artistry, it's been that way for probably thousands of years. And it requires specialized skills, the interpreting and translation techniques that our interpreters, for example, have learned and that translators know. Education, we've pointed out already, language knowledge, domain expertise for a particular technical subject, educational degrees. I guess technology is not cooperating with me here. And of course experience, because I think most of us will agree the largest amount of learning that happens for the business that we're in is on the job. We learn a great deal by doing the work. That, I think, is without dispute. Now, most people, I think, at this point, consider the language that we're in to be a profession, that it has many professional aspects. But those are less well understood, I think, by the public. So some of the training that's required to do what we do, professional instruction and job-based training programs, we have an increasing number of standards that we adhere to. We talk about licensing, we talk about certification now that we didn't do many years ago. We're still working on that, but that's something that's being developed. And then we have organizations, and I'm very glad to see that a number of us are here and that this is represented well, because this is part of the way that we promote our professionalism. We create and share knowledge and ideas and best practices. We hold events, GALA, ELIA, Translators Associations, ATA. These are important parts of the profession that we are all in. Language, too, though, is a technology in its own right. And we all talk about technology a great deal. But I think it's important to recognize that it is a sector of its own. This is a newer idea for our industry. It's not everyone outside fully understands what that means. And the idea of the technology inside the industry is still somewhat in dispute in terms of its level of importance. I think maybe outside, the public is more ready to adopt this notion when we see things like Google Translate. The public is very happy to acknowledge that language is perhaps only or just a technology. But we... Oh, I see, okay. I thought maybe they were going to fix it. I'm sorry. The connection here, okay. So, sorry about that, speaking of technology. So, you know, but we of course view them very closely, because they are our tools, right? They are the computer-aided translation tools that we use, the speech tools, terminology databases, and so forth. We have now much more emphasis on workflows, which are increasingly internet-based. They integrate with translation management systems, content publishing and delivery, and so forth. And of course, increasingly the talk is about automation, machine translation, which is received with varying degrees of warmth or coolness by various parts of the industry. Real-time translation tools and interpreting tools. And there's even talk in the industry about translation becoming a utility, which basically means it will be like electricity or water. It will simply exist, and we will all be able to partake of translation, just like as we do for electric power and water. And now, going beyond that, we have seen that language has become a business. It's a commercial undertaking. It's not just as a craft used to be an individual practice. This is a group business undertaking, which has a whole range of people within it, not just a single person, again, who's doing the craft, but shareholders, employees, managers, customers, and so forth. So all of the parts of business that we've come to expect in many other sectors. And business processes, too, are becoming much more important. Plans, systems, training, All of these kinds of things are becoming essential to what it means to be in language. And the business drivers, the reasons, the objectives that we are in business are becoming more prominent. So things like profit, growth, sustainability, shareholder value, these are important concepts for us to think about when we talk about business. Yeah? Is it still, it's not cooperating? I'm sorry, I'm on a Mac here, so, you know, a foreigner on a Mac, I guess that's not a good combination. Anyhow, so the business concept is something that's quite, I think the big business concept is something that's quite new for the language as well. And I guess what I would like to emphasize too is that as we develop these parts of the language industry, we're becoming more mature, and so we realize that we're also part of a larger community, and we've begun to talk about that here already. It's a greater network of businesses and technologies and professionals. We talk about markets, not just sort of personalized, sort of individualized work, but niches and various applications. We have stakeholders that are not just those of us here mostly who produce language work, but also the buyers, the clients, influencers, policymakers even in the government level are becoming stakeholders in the language community. And associations too, because they provide a context for the common challenges that we face and to develop solutions together, as we've already talked about a bit here, to promote ourselves and to educate the broader public. So one concept that I'd like to share with you today is that all of this together creates what we could call an enterprise, a language enterprise, which is the entire network of inputs and outputs, all that's necessary for us to do our work, but also to develop the sector itself and to meet new demands and challenges, which are quite great, and we've already alluded to some of them. So we do have to include in our concept, in our discussion, educators and researchers, and skilled, those who can produce skilled workers, freelance professionals, of course, service companies who assemble the solutions for end clients, and the clients themselves and the end users who create the demand for everything that we're doing, but are also stakeholders, and some of them, of course, are also providers themselves. They have their own in-house teams, they have their own localization programs. Technology developers who provide the support infrastructure for the whole enterprise. And again, the greater kind of association platform community that can help us explore the commonalities and redefine the new skills that we need. So, given that we're all part of this very large enterprise now, I'd like to offer a couple of trends that I see here, and there are many of these, many trends happening, of course, but I want to emphasize two of them, a couple of observations as well, and an opportunity. We now see a very strong trend towards commoditization, and some of you may have heard this term, and you may be a victim, so to speak, of it, or may feel like a victim of it. It's been building for some time, but I think it's quite strong now in the last 10 or 15 years or so. The emphasis is on tools and automation and huge public demand for translation now. All of this is accelerating this process of commoditization. A couple of points about that. The ignorance about what we do in the general public and the lack of experience are still big causes of this commoditization. So that causes us to spend a lot of time explaining ourselves to our customers, to our end users, and educating the clients. Quality, which is something that we always talk about internally, is something that is increasingly assumed, often assumed automatically by customers. It's not really talked about all the time necessarily with them. They simply assume that we who provide language work will provide the appropriate level of quality or the required level of quality, and that we know what that is. So that's a big assumption that exists now. And that leads to a problem of differentiation for companies and stakeholders in our enterprise. If you are selling on price as a differentiator, then that is the definition of a commodity. So that enhances the notion in the customer's view that we are, in fact, that language is a commodity that to be sold on price. Selling on quality, on the other hand, is really very hard to do and rarely a differentiator in many customers' eyes. So this is something we have to think about as we build our enterprise forward. Another big trend, of course, is technologization or technologification. I'm not even sure if either of those is a real English word, but technology now is at the core of everything we do. The workflows are changing very rapidly. Many of us know the model of translation, edit, proof, 3 steps, something like that. That model may be collapsing now. Content is coming in much smaller chunks. It doesn't arrive the way it used to. There are more disconnects within that process. Automation is now a mainstream concern. It's now a mainstream issue for us. If you are in the business of language and you are not automating at least some part of your workflow, then you're losing time, you're losing money, and business ultimately. So the call today is for more content, faster turnaround, doing more with less. We hear all of this repeatedly. You really will find it very hard to keep up without some form of automation. And then there are all the new skills that we need that are critical for what we do. For example, how many of you here in this room are working with machine translation in some form and post-editing? Okay, so maybe 20 or 25, something like that, which is a very small amount in the room. This is a whole new area of skills that we're looking to create in the industry. It is not necessarily the case that a translator can be a post-editor, and many don't want to be, so that's another issue. But it's very important for us to start looking at how are we going to develop these skills, where are they going to come from, and how can we make those happen so that we don't become overwhelmed by the challenge. Let me share with you now, just quickly, a couple of observations as well about the language enterprise. And one is that all of our work is digital. I think it's important to think about that as we go forward. This is not true only, of course, in language. It's true in many different areas. And to that end, I think it's useful to kind of think of our language work as being technical, that all of it is technical. We sometimes talk about the difference between technical translation and non-technical translation, but the fact is that language translation work is all technical, and we should stop making that distinction. Yes, there are differences between domains, there are differences between nuclear power plants and medical devices and this sort of thing, but the work itself is highly technical and highly digital, and it will continue to evolve that way. Another important point for us is that content influences the tools that we use, and at the same time, the tools that we use influence the way that content is worked on. So there's a sort of a mutual interaction, a sort of взаимодействие there that these two things affect each other. It's a bit like, I suppose, the Heisenberg principle of language work, that the tools can't touch content without affecting it in some fashion. So there's really an important distinction there to think about, and to realize that we're going to be changing how we create and how we translate and work on multilingual content. And the fact that digital access now exists for everyone means that there are more and more players, there are more and more participants in the enterprise, and more opportunities, as well as more challenges. So we're going to have more buyers, we're going to have more providers, more companies, but we'll have new models as well. And some of them, Renato mentioned Translators Without Borders. Some of them are cost-free models. This Translators Without Borders is not the only one. There are also other activities and efforts underway to create free translation and free interpreting in the world, in certain communities and in certain ways. I think it's important that we don't dismiss these kinds of discussions and these topics, but integrate them into our discussion and think about how they affect what we do and how we can interact with them. And one other observation I'd like to make is that the language enterprise, the work that we do, is global. It's everywhere. We're arguably one of the first industries in the world that did offshoring because we had to. We had to go find the native speakers wherever they were. But the demand for content and multilinguality is so high now that that the work is coming from everywhere, it's going everywhere, and it exists in every mode. So we have to be prepared for that. Most of the language enterprise that we have just been talking about can be done anywhere. It doesn't have to be where you are. It doesn't have to be where the linguists are. Native speakers may still come from a certain place or a specific set of places, but almost everything else that's involved in the language enterprise can be done anywhere. And so that means we have to be very cognizant of this fact. We have to be very aware of this. And that the reason for that is the next point, that technology lowers and removes, in some cases, the barriers that exist or that have existed, like geography and like access. We can collaborate with anyone from anywhere in real time. Language infrastructure tools are very easily accessible all over the world, which of course goes back to the previous point about being digital. So it's probably no longer a useful concept to think about domestic markets versus foreign markets, or the global community as separate somehow from your own internal market, internal community. More and more of this integration is happening, and we have to be very aware that that is how we need to exist within the language enterprise. Now, to an opportunity, and I'm glad that several of us have mentioned it already here this morning. I think we have a huge opportunity for what we in the US might call co-opetition, which is a mix of competition and cooperation. So this is the integration, the integracja that Stanislav talked about. We have a huge opportunity for that. This world of 24/7 connectedness and cloud computing gives us that opportunity to create better offerings with broad benefits. And one example I'd just like to point out from my own, or from our own perspective here in my organization is the Qt Launchpad project that we are working on in conjunction with the European Union. This is a project to develop quality standards, real objective quality standards, which has been missing in our industry for forever, really, but certainly for decades. But it will include real-world inputs from industry, from the companies and producers of language, which GALA will be working on with them to provide. 3 key points about the co-opetition that I'd like to point out. There are mutual interests that we have, even among competitors. Quality, for example, is something that affects all of us. And if we can define that in a better way, that will help every one of us provide better service and sell better to customers, and it will help customers understand what they're buying better. There are complementary resources in the industry. Many of the participants in quality, from freelancers all the way to the end client, many aspects exist from linguistic to technical. There are different requirements from high to low for quality. So all of us can represent different parts of those resources and provide real inputs to defining this. And ultimately, the goal with co-opetition, with integration, is to create higher value, isn't it? It's to create more relevance for the work that we do for the whole enterprise, so we can demonstrate that it has relevance, that it has a great deal of contribution to make. And if we can clarify our roles and processes, we'll have a better opportunity to sell and produce. So co-opetition, integracja is a critical piece
and I certainly applaud the organizers of UTIC for that philosophy and for the putting into practice this idea of bringing us together and to begin to create that co-opetition. Lastly, I just want to look maybe at the present and a little bit towards the future and ask you to think about, are you in the business that you want to be in? We're all in the business we're in, obviously, but how do we get into the business we want to be in? And I tried to put a whole bunch of stuff together here in a graphic to try to think about some of these issues that might go into this question. And it seems to me that we have a series of areas that we need to think about when we are in the business that we're in. So you can be on the supply side, where you're supplying words or you're supplying products or components for your customers, and that makes you kind of a raw material provider. Or you can be a provider of services and products where you're beginning to consolidate some of these parts and provide solutions for the customers that they're looking for. So that might be a business process provider. You can step up even further and become a form of system integrator for the demand side, for the buyers who need what we're providing. And that's a more of a strategic effort at how they outsource what they're looking for the language enterprise to provide. And ultimately, you can become a real partner. We talk sometimes a great deal about being partners with our customers. Very hard to achieve. And I think there, your thoughts may be about how do I provide a real customer partnership experience for my customers. Not just providing services or parts or solutions, but real integration with the customer. And so along the left side here, you see maybe, and this isn't highly scientific, the kind of progression perhaps up the scale as you go, from freelancer to a partner that's really integrated with the customer. As you go up that chain, if you want to be in that business further up, you need much more of things like knowledge, integration, sales in particular, management, expertise in technology. I've come up with a little sort of word to describe that, kismet, which, as it happens in Turkish, means luck, which you'll also need in this enterprise. But the point is to begin to think to yourself, where do I want to be in this dynamic? Do I want to be someone that my customer thinks of as an interchangeable commodity, because many do think of translation, the words of translation, as being an interchangeable commodity? Or do I want to move up and develop more loyalty, more value, more integration with the customer? It's critical that you think about that so that you can drive your business in the right direction. And that's part of what we do when we get together at these events to discuss the enterprise. How many in this room right now would say, can you say with confidence that you'd say, you are in the business you want to be in? You're satisfied with the size, with the revenues, with the, oh, hands just went down. You're satisfied with the size, revenues, product, solutions, customers, everything. Yes? How many hands? Wow! Well, I have to say, that's more than I would have thought. I think everybody should go talk to those people and find out how they're doing that, because whenever I was in business for 30 years, I never felt that way. But, okay, perhaps I was doing something wrong. In any case, these are the kinds of things you I think are useful to think about as you progress in the enterprise. And just a few last words about broader community. One of the ways you can do that, in addition to working on your own business and your own products and your own services, improving that, is also to think about everything that isn't you. Everything that is not your business is all around you and affects how you interact with the larger enterprise. So it's very important for you to connect and network find out what other players are doing, what they're not doing. Where's the opportunity? Where's the challenge? Share the knowledge with and learn from others. Exchange the knowledge and expertise with them. This is a great way to create the co-opetition, the integracja that we talked about. Doesn't mean you have to give away secrets. It simply means that you can build on knowledge from each other, which is a way to improve the background, the fun for all of us. And help promote the language enterprise. It's very important because we are still in a situation where the language enterprise is poorly understood outside, and we need to help everyone understand it better so our experience can be better, providing what we do, and those outside us and we can build more potential customers. Just one last word about GALA. Associations are a great place to do all of those things. GALA's goal is to exist and help companies like yourselves all over the world to provide those three things. Community, where you can exchange and network, knowledge sharing, where you can learn, and advocacy, what we call advocacy, which is all about promoting the enterprise and making sure that those outside understand properly what we do. GALA is one, ELIA is another organization. Whether it's GALA or ELIA or ATA or any place else, it's important to connect with those as well as your own efforts. Reach out beyond your borders, beyond your niches, beyond today, and really build for the great challenges that I think that are before us in the language enterprise and in these exciting times. So I thank you for your comments. Дякую, спасибо, and I look forward to talking with many of you.